Hebrews chapter 13. We're going to read the first 4 words of verse 10. We had an altar. Leviticus chapter 6, the 13th verse says, "The fire shall ever be burning upon the altar, it shall never go out." And then in Psalms, chapter 118, and we're going to read the 27th verse. It says, "God is the Lord, which hath showed us light. Bind the sacrifice with cords, even unto the horns of the altar." Back to Hebrews 13, verse 10. We have an altar. And I've been thinking all week, and it seems like this has just rung out in my heart, this thought about we have an altar. And we go through a lot of things in life, and seems like, I think about Ephesians, talks about put on the whole armor of God, and one of the things he talks about you should put on is having the shield of faith, for which you can quench the fiery darts of the wicked one. And every time we turn around, there's something else that just seems like it comes up, and Satan wants to fight, and you know that he's going to, because the Bible says, "Count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations." And the trial of your faith is more precious than gold that perisheth. And but I thought, if there's anything we should thank God for other than the fact that we're saved by His grace, what more to be able to thank God for than the fact that we have an altar? And I started going back and look, and I started reading in Exodus a little bit, and you go back to Exodus, the 20th chapter, and God starts to tell Moses about how he's supposed to build the altars and what he's supposed to do. And one of the altars that's there, and the first one that you start to read about, is the altar that they would use. They would do the burnt sacrifices. It was the altar of burnt offering, and it was made of brass. And God told Moses exactly how he was supposed to build it. But actually, if you go back a little bit before that, he tells him. He said that if you have an altar, he said that you make out here. He said, make it of the earth. Don't make it of hewn stone. If you make it of stone, make sure it's not hewn, because if you even put any sort of tool against it, it'll be polluted. And I thought, boy, it's interesting to me that God first gives Moses a commandment for our altar for our everyday life. And then he starts to give him a commandment for the altar of the burnt offering. And then the next thing he gives him a commandment for is another altar, and it's the incense altar. But then there's some things that God begins to start to put together and start to show Moses, and says, hey, there's also something else that you have to have if you're going to have the high priest come over here and use these things by the altar. The other thing you have to have is you have to have a laver, and you have to have a basin, because if they even touch the altar and touch the things that are there, they have to be washed. And I'm thankful that when I got saved by God's grace, and that Steve, he washed me whiter than snow in the blood of the Lamb, and the sacrifice that was made as the burnt offering was none other than Christ. And when I accepted that sacrifice and I came to it, look, that sacrifice took upon the sin of whoever it was that was giving that sacrifice up. And even so much as so that if you read what they were supposed to do every day, that every day in the morning they were supposed to give a sacrifice of the lamb, and every day in the evening they were supposed to give a sacrifice of the lamb. And but my friend, there was one sacrifice that came one day that was a supreme sacrifice, that all the blood of the bulls and the goats, it just rolled sin over year after year after year. But there was a sacrifice, that lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world, that when God saw that sacrifice, that blood was good enough to wash sin away, to come and take your sin and to cast it into the sea of forgetfulness, as far as the east is from the west. And you look at these altars, and the first thing is that burnt offering. But then after you do that, then you can get a little bit closer to the veil where that golden altar is, that you can offer incense. And the only time you were offering incense is when you were at peace with God. God looks at that offering, and He sees a sweet smelling savor for the things that you're offering up. That's when you know that you have an altar with God. It's when you're at peace with the Lord, and you can smell that sweet smelling savor, my friend. But now that you're saved by the grace of God, there's still a sacrifice that's required of you, and it's none other than yourself. The Bible said that we're a living sacrifice, a holy, acceptable unto God, which is our reasonable service. It's our duty, now that we're saved by God's grace, to still use the altar that God set up in your heart, one that's sanctified, one that's anointed, one that's purified, and one that's good for the sacrifice, not just for sin, but sacrifice of peace, sacrifice of thanksgiving, whatever it is, God's given you an altar that you can use to commune with Him. Amen. Hebrews says, just those 4 words, we have an altar. And then you go back and you look, and you start to read about the sacrifices that were offered on each and every one. You think, well, that's Old Testament stuff. My friend, those same offerings that were offered back then are the same offerings that you and I get the opportunity to offer today in our spiritual life. The altar that God's talking about is not one that's of wood. It's not one that we're looking at right here that's physical in the church, but it's the spiritual altar that God set up inside of your heart when you got saved by His grace, that you can commune with God and that God's allowed you to use. If you use that altar, God will be present and God will show up. It'll fill up your temple with the glory of God. Moses told him, he said, look, God has chosen to speak with us through the altar, and that there's different times you read about that when they would begin to sacrifice, that God would come back and He would move in to the temple and to the tabernacle, and His glory would fill that place up. My friend, you and I, we're the temple of God. We're the vessel that God has chosen to use. But too many times, our altar's neglected. Our altar's broken down. Our altar, it's just left in ruins. If you go back to the book of Ezra and you start to read about when the children of Israel came back from Babylon, one of the first things that they had to do was repair the altar. It's time you and I, as God's people, repair the altars of our hearts and got back to where God was at, so we can have true communion with God. And so our family can see the presence of God in our life. It takes us getting back to the altar. Amen. Ezra, you read it, 3rd chapter, they rebuild the altar, and they get back into the Word of God. They go back, they read the law, Nehemiah chapter 7, in chapter 8 and chapter 9. There they are at the Feast of Tabernacles, and it said that Nehemiah, here he is, and all the people are there, gathered as one man toward Jerusalem, and here comes Nehemiah, and there he is, and Obadiah takes the Word of God, and he gets up, and Ezra stands right by him, and he takes it, and he opens it, and the people stand, and then they shout, and then they weep, and then they drop on their face, and say amen, amen. Hey, you know why? We don't get excited about the Word of God anymore. It's because the altar's left in ruins. The first thing they had to do was rebuild the altar of God, and when they did that, the Word of God, it became fresh again. It was anointed with fresh oil again. It became life again. It fed them again. But it took the altar of God. Opened it. The people stood. Man, we stand for just about everything else. Ezra, we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We stand for the national anthem. But we get lazy when it comes to reading the Word of God. Hey, you know what? It might be something for us to pray about. If God's Word get read when a preacher stands up, maybe we should just stand and reverence the Word of God. There's nothing wrong with that. I read what Nehemiah said. They were excited about God's Word, but it took them first humbling their hearts and getting the altar back. We have to do the same thing. I've got loved ones. They're cold. They're indifferent. But I read there in Leviticus chapter 6, the fire is continually on the altar. It shall never go out. Boy, it's not good. There's been times, Mike, that I've let the altar get neglected in my own life. That I've let it get beaten down. And then if you go and look at it, it's overgrown. And there's things that are there that probably shouldn't be sitting next to the altar. So much clutter in my heart that you can't even see where the altar's at anymore. But just like they were, and Dad mentioned this the other day, in the days of Hezekiah, and they had to clean up the temple of God. There's some times that you and I, my friend, we've got to clean up this temple that God's given us. And we can't do it ourselves. We can't examine ourselves. We need God to look inside our hearts and see what it is that we've got in our heart and mind, and ask God to let us be continually stayed upon His Word. David, search me, try me, O God. See if there's any wicked way in me. Boy, I hide things from God. I think I do. I try to. Well, God, I got this, I got this, I got this. And I'll get rid of this if you do this. That's not how God works. We have to keep His commandments. There's no negotiating with God. You have to keep those things. You have to keep this temple. There's been things God's been dealing with me about the last few weeks, and I've let those things get neglected in my life, and I've taken no care, no thought of them. And God said, Josh, you're not doing right. One of those, I'll just tell it because I know if I don't, I won't be held accountable. But a lot of you know that I dip, and that I dip tobacco, and I do it all the time. And I've done it for about 5 or 6 years now, and I've quit about 1,800 times, and every single time I go back. But God said, Josh, if you just rebuild that altar, son, and you get right back to where I want you to, you will keep that temple clean and do exactly what I told you to do. Well, that's not my conviction. Good, don't do it. That's mine. That's what God told me to do. I want to hear what the Word of God is telling me to do. I know exactly. You said it the other day. We've got to know who we are. We've got to start to understand what our own weaknesses are. Satan knows what they are. He knows exactly where your weakness is and where you're going to come up short and where you're going to try to fall. And He's going to try to put that stumbling stone in your life so you'll trip and fall. And how great will be the fall thereof. You know how you get saved on the run? The altar. We have an altar. Psalm 118. It said, to tie your sacrifice with cords even into the horns of the altar. Why? Just as you and I are a living sacrifice, when they had a sacrifice in the Old Testament, it was a living sacrifice. It was one that was a lamb or a bullock. Sometimes if they didn't have those, God would even make, I'm glad God made a way for even the poor and the stranger, would give them an opportunity to have turtle doves and to take them and offer them. Aren't you glad no matter where you're at, no matter who you are, no matter how low you are, how poor you are, God made a way for you to get saved by His grace. But my friend, even since then, there's still been times that I have not got to get saved again, but I still had to go and ask God to get this sinful flesh out of the way and offer myself as a sacrifice. Hey, a lot of those people, when they raised those lambs, I'm not talking about just the ones that were at the temple, but God told them that they could raise their own and bring it over as an offering for their family. It had to be within the first year, without spot, without blemish. They spent a year with the sacrifice and they watched it every single day. They looked at every spot to see if there was any. They looked at every inch to see if there was any blemish. They loved that sacrifice just as you and I love ourselves. If we're not careful, we'll let whatever it is that we're trying to lay at the altar of God get right back up. But God said, don't let it happen. Tie it down and sacrifice it. If you're not careful, that lamb that you lay down, you lay it right down. God said, sacrifice that thing, kill it, get it out of your life. Why? It wasn't the lamb's fault. But you put that sin on that lamb and you laid it on the altar. And every little bit of it that you love so much. I don't think they went up and just straight up stabbed that thing in the back and let the blood pour out. I think that man looked at that thing, put his hand on his head. Thank you for taking our sins. Thank you for being an offering that's pure. And took that knife
with every bit of love that he had, cut that thing in the throat and watched the blood pour out. And he didn't let any drop go to waste. Not only did he take it and sprinkle it, but then he made sure on the bottom of the altar that there was a basin that would capture the rest of the blood. And then they would take the fat and the liver and the caul, and they would take it and take it outside of the camp and burn it. And it said it was a sin offering. Hey, isn't that just how Christ was? He was taken without the gate, and he was sacrificed for you and I. That lamb without spot, without blemish. But ever since then, Steve, there's still things that God wants me to lay back down, that I take it up on my own. And if I'm not careful, that living sacrifice, I'll let it sit there and I'll look at it and I'll get ready to slay it. And then I'll say, you know what? I just can't do it. I can't do it. But God said, a threefold cord is not soon easily broken. What is that? It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And when you take it and you tie that back to the altar of God, your sacrifice will be acceptable in the eyes of God. We have an altar. It doesn't even have to be just something for sin. Maybe it's something that's a burden, that you have a peace offering you need to bring to God. If you're not careful, you'll say, boy, that cake, it looks good. I'm going to pull it right back up off the altar, take it back home and eat it myself. It's a free will offering. It's an offering acceptable unto God. Maybe it's that drink offering. Now, you couldn't do that on the altar of incense, but you could do it on the burnt offering. Take a drink offering and pour it out. Take a meat offering and put it there. Or some of them, you would take a heave offering. That's my favorite. I appreciate the sin offering, I really do. That is my favorite because of everything else that comes after it. But now that you're saved by God's grace, there's nothing better than offering unto God and watching God take it up and give it right back. How simple is the way that all God asks for us is just be a sacrifice. Just do your reasonable service. Follow after what the Word of God says. And when you do that, the Almighty God, the Creator of heaven and earth, will look right back at you and say, thank you, son, I'm going to give it right back. And not just give it back, but give us exceeding great and precious promises. Open up the windows of heaven and pour us out blessings so much that we can't even receive them. That's what God does when we use the altar. We have an altar, but we don't use it like we should. I understand when you're saved, use that for the burnt offering. But they would still come back to the temple. They still have to wash. They would still offer once a year. And the priest would offer on the incense altar. Once a year, the high priest would take of the blood, and first he'd have to atone for himself. You realize that you and I, when we are going to commune with God, God's not going to hear you if there's iniquity in your heart. Paul, I'm just going to be honest with you. I pray for Anna, I really do. I want to see her get saved by the grace of God. But until she gets saved by God's grace, she's not going to understand what prayer is. No. She's not. Why? Because a lost person cannot understand the things of the Spirit of God. Right. But oh, if she could just taste and see. Just taste and see of the goodness of God. And then we have an altar after we're saved by His grace that we can still go back into. You know what the altar was built after? It was built after the kingdom of God. The things that God had. Hebrews chapter 9. To the things on the earth that God set up in the earthly tabernacle were built after heavenly things. Right. And that offering was the same offering that the lamb that was slain on the foundation of the earth was slain on. It was laid on from the beginning of time. And everything else after that was built upon that plan. And now you and I, we're communing with the same exact altar on the inside of our heart because we are in the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is within you, in that inward man. The one that's there, that's dwelling, is perfect. There's no more veil between you and the holiest of holies. Because when He was was sacrificed, he read it from top to bottom, and by his own blood took it in and cleaned it up. Now the Holies of Holies, we all have access to it. And we're made kings and priests. And now every little bit that was in the temple, you and I, we have the authority to do it. God gives us the power. He gives us the authority. And he tells us exactly how it's supposed to be done through his word. God does not leave you dark. He's a lamp unto my feet, a light unto my path. Boy, we have an altar. Why don't we use it? Whatever burden it is, whatever thing you got going on, use the altar of God. That's what it's there for. How sweet it is to commune with him, to sup with him, to know that he hears you. Every prayer, every thought of your heart. But then, if you just be quiet for a little bit to hear what he says back. We talk way too much. I get in trouble all the time at work. Sit in every meeting, blabber my mouth, everything that comes up. I have a suggestion. I have a comment. But you know what? I do that with God all the time, Mike. God, I want you to do this, and I want you to do it this way, and I want you to do it in my time. If I was just quiet, Paul, I hear that still small voice that came back. Every time I get down and out, Lord, this isn't happening in my time. The church isn't growing the way that I thought it was going to. You got all these things, and you said this was going to happen. Elijah, come out of the cave. God wasn't in the fire. God wasn't in the earthquake. He wasn't in the great wind. He was in the still small voice. And when it spoke, what did it say? Why are you here, Elijah? Don't you realize that I have 7,000 that haven't bowed a knee to bow? Josh, don't you realize the same thing that I promised you, the same thing I've told you time and time again is still true to this day? It's still going to happen. Just let it happen in my time, son. All these other things that we go through, sometimes it's just a trial of our faith. It said, Peter, try your faith, more precious than gold that perisheth. And then you go and read, it said, no other foundation can be laid than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. And whatsoever you build thereupon, whether it be wood, hay, precious stones, stubble, gold, silver, it shall be tried by fire. And whatsoever will stand is going to stand. The trial of your faith is more precious than gold. If you go through trials and you go through temptation, it's going to be built with precious stones. That's what you're going to be building it on, because it teaches you faith. Tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope, and hope maketh not ashamed. When you're building on the foundation of God with heavenly things, not the worldly things, not the wood, not the hay, not the stubble, not the things that are going to burn up. You know what the fire is? It's the Spirit and the Word of God. And when it comes and tries your sacrifice, whatever it is you're lighted on, it'll be tried with fire, and only heavenly things are going to stand.